Hi, I'm Lulu, compulsive overeater, and we're still discussing the promises of the program. This one is called Our Spirituality Grows. The 11th promise assures us spiritual growth will be a part of our sobriety. The promise states, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. When drinking, we had little faith in prayer. Our impatience never allowed us to understand good things must come in God's time, not ours. Grandiosity kept us from turning anything over to God. Even when we felt a need for help, we were usually resigned to our drinking problem. Our ego told us if we got out of the driver's seat, we'd lose control. Yet once we permit God to do what we cannot, we find happiness we never knew existed. We learn what it is to share with love. We discover that once we recognize God's will for us, we still have the responsibility of changing ourselves and carrying out his will. The 11th promise informs us we must completely turn over problems that are beyond our control. As this promise materializes for us, we will have a better understanding of God and his power. Finding God may seem too great a task, but a sincere search for him will sustain our spiritual progress. God will always be too great an entity for humans to understand entirely, but all our efforts at awareness will build a strong faith that unlocks the doors to acceptance. When we have faith, we have made the first move toward letting go and letting God do for us what we cannot do. In this relationship with a higher power, faith leads to trust. The less we press at being spiritual, the more spiritual we become. Once we find a satisfying relationship with a higher power, we will know we can never again play God with the lives of others. Obviously, contact with God must be through prayer and meditation, our communication system with our higher power. So long as we have faith that the 11th promise will be part of our sobriety, we will develop confidence and we will make the spiritual progress necessary for continued sobriety. Trust in this promise will make us aware that we will never walk alone no matter where we travel in sobriety. Our spirituality grows. I heard it said once, and I want to just find it really, really quickly in my big book where I wrote it, and I won't be able to do that. And then I'm going to be going through pages doing that, and then I'm not going to stop right now. See, I was going to try. It was something about it was something that somebody said at a meeting one time about a chair. Like you have a chair and you look at the chair and it looks a little kind of rickety. You're not sure if it's going to, you're going to sit on it, if it's going to cave in, right? So somebody says, oh, don't worry about it. It will hold you. And you're like, all right. This person told me, so I'm going to believe that it will hold me. So I kind of sit on it. I don't just kind of drop my weight on it. I believe you, but I'm going to sit on it, and I'm going to see. And then I sit and I go, oh, it does. It's not going to break. It sits. It holds me. Now the next time I walk by that chair, I don't believe it's going to hold me. I have faith it's going to hold. I know it's going to hold. So that's kind of like what was kind of like my transition into my going from a belief to a faith. When you go from a belief to a faith, like when they say I need to come to believe that a power greater than myself will restore me to sanity. Okay, yeah, I believe it. I believe that. Doesn't mean it's happened. I believe what that says, and I believe that that's what I need. Because in step 1, I learned what my problem is. In step 2, it's kind of like, all right, so this is your solution. So I've seen enough people, just like the person that says the chair won't fall, you'll be okay. Other people in program are saying, just, believe that it will happen for you, and it will. And I just had such a hard time with that until I just opened my mind like as big as the Grand Canyon. I was just like, I can't open my mind anything any more than I can right now. This is how desperate I was, because I was in program a couple of other times with a very closed mind, and it was never going to work for me, and it didn't until I was 55 years old, 7 years ago, and I decided to shut up and sit down. For, just listen to somebody else for the first time in your life, And so I was believing what these people were telling me. I didn't think like, this is a crock, and then as these promises started to materialize for me, and I'm like, how could this stuff even be happening for me? I went from belief to faith. It's just like, oh yeah, unshakable. It feels very unshakable. But I need to keep doing my step 11. It says, my impatience never allowed me to understand that good things must come in God's time and not ours. Even a faith in God has to come in God's time. I mean, it was just like, God's not very demanding. Addicts don't want rules and regulations. We don't like that. God is just so, well, I guess it depends. We can go back to step 2 and 3, where we kind of, when we're trying to realize our conception of God, and to know that we can really kind of start from the bottom up and create our own conception. The book is never telling us what we need to believe in, what we don't believe in, developing that conception had to really work for me. It had to really work for me, and only I could feel what was going to work for me. And then that was my kind of jumping off point, And then from there, it's just grown and grown and grown, It just keeps growing into a new field. For me, it's a field, I was grasping. It's like, how about angels? How about fairies? Like, oh, I love fairies and gnomes and all that. And I'm just like, it was, and my conception of God is still very playful. But it's evolved into something much richer. Like, I think Shalece has used that word, richer. Also, where it says, God will always be too great an entity for humans to understand entirely. But all our efforts at awareness will build a strong faith that unlocks the doors to acceptance. Because the big book tells me acceptance is the answer to all my troubles. So in order for me to have acceptance, I need to build a strong faith. In order to build a strong faith, I have to put my effort into awareness. But am I ever going to figure out the God thing? I always say if God was small enough for my mind, he wouldn't be big enough for my needs. Like, I need God to be big enough for everything. And I refer to God as God just because it's easy. I had a very hard time with the word God, and I would need to say all the different things in the big book, that the big books, every time you see a word that starts with a capital letter as it's a proper noun, it's just Bill Wilson trying to let anybody say, oh, I can stomach that word. I can stomach that word, when you can't stomach the God word. And I have them all. I compiled them all at the end of my big book. Presence of infinite power and love. Power, divine force, supreme being, creative intelligence, spirit of the universe, realm of spirit, all-powerful guiding creative intelligence, father of light, creator, reason, bridge of reason, great reality. Then also there's father, employer, principal, director. There's all these words, right? And he's just like, if you have to think of, God as like anything, just pick something. Just pick something, If you can't, so I would always go from one word to the other, And then I just thought, like, talk about what we talked about earlier about complicating things. I'm like, Lulu, it won't kill you to say God. You don't have to worry about what people will think you mean by that. You know, like I can do that with certain things, right? It's like, well, what will they think it means? Um, they'll think I'm like, that I go to church every Sunday, and well, God forbid anyone knows that about me. It was okay if everybody knew I spent, half my life in the bars and bakeries. That was okay, but, but, being in a church, no, don't think that about me. And then, and then when I say he, I also refer to God as he. And I do not, my God is not a man. It's not a man, but I'm not going to call my God it. I can just call it he. I know it's not a man in my world. It might be a man in your world, and that's great. Whatever your conception is just perfect. What I love is that we probably don't have, none of us have the same conception. We all have our own. That's the whole point where it says, where, Ebby says to Bill in the book, he says, he was over his house that day. Why don't you just create your own conception of God? It's just like, really? Yeah. How about that? And we all get to do it, so I can very comfortably say God, and he helps me, and I just know what my God is, and it keeps growing. It keeps growing, and the relationship feels more and more satisfying as I just relate to the world around me. I look out my window and I see God. I wake up in the morning and I see God. I look into the eyes of a person and I can see God. I just see it. And anyway, I know that I have to work my step 11 for my spirituality to grow. When I suddenly realized that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. There's something else that happens suddenly, and it might be in one step 10, somewhere down the road. Suddenly, I realize, when that happens in your journey, when you realize that God is doing for you what you can't do for yourself, that will be a happy day. That's what I got.
Oh, thank you so much. So my spirituality grows. It as I was listening to your experience, Lulu, you and I mean, we come from so far different ends of the spiritual spectrum. So I did sit my butt in a pew every single Sunday my whole life growing up. But it was kind of like sitting and watching an exercise video and expecting to get fit. I would sit my butt in the chair, but and I would listen, and so I had a conception, but my spirituality didn't actually grow until I came into this program and began to deconstruct the conception that I had, which I think is a very important part of my own story, and I'm so grateful for it. But it's just like if you really think about, I like the word grows, and just kind of taking it back to, a seed that's planted, and a seed by itself is just going to sit there dormant. It's just going to sit there and not do anything. But you got to have the right conditions, the right time of year. You put it in soil and you give it water. I don't know. Lulu knows more about this than I do. There's a process. There's like a process that has to happen, and the right conditions that has to happen in order for the seed to sprout and in order for it to grow into a mature plant. So, and it's the same thing with my spirituality. The conditions have to be right. I have to be ready. And for me, like, I love that the reading said, this really stood out to me, when I allow God to do for me what I could not do for myself. So this is something that I have to, part of the condition is that I have to let go of my will, trying to control everything in my life, trying to control my food, trying to control my people, trying to control the weather, trying to control everything, because I just really literally have no control. And so when I allow God to do for me what I cannot do for myself, then my spirituality can begin. That's where it all starts with that willingness. If you go back and listen to our arch section, I've got to have that willingness to allow God to come in and renovate, and cultivate what I have. So I think each of us just innately has a spiritual center. Maybe we're aware of it and maybe we're not. And we're ready when we're ready to allow that to grow. I know for me, I have had little bits. I love Harlan's, what he says. The only thing I need to know about God is that there is one. It's not me. And that is enough to start. That's enough to okay, we got a seed. There's a God. I don't need to know anything else about God to make a beginning, just that there is one and it's not me. So that's putting the seed in the soil. And then each little process of the steps, each little step is just adding that water or nutrients to the soil or some sunlight. And this grows and grows and grows. And I think for me, recently going through a situation in December that just brought me to a rock bottom in my defect of people pleasing, really exponentially brought me to my knees. And though I believe that my spirituality had been growing up to that point, there became a really, really deep need to connect on a deeper level to this God. I literally cannot do this life without you. I can't do my food. I can't do my family. I can't do my work. I can't do my people pleasing without you. And so, so at that point for me, I began doing two-way prayer, and that since December, I feel that there's just kind of been this exponential growth in me, where the source I'm starting very, very slowly starting to see what it's like to really have that close friendship and relationship with a higher power. And I just know, and I look forward to more growth, because the cool thing about, if you think about seeds and plants, they grow even to maturity, then those plants produce seeds and those grow into more and more and more. So there's really, for me, to just look forward to never arriving at perfection, but look forward to the growth and really look forward to the next situation that is going to grow me, because each of those situations, as painful as life situations can be, each one of them grows me. And so it's something really to look forward to. And that was, I heard a quote, and I can't, it's just a short one. It's just, be careful never to arrive, but keep showing up. Be careful never to arrive. I know we want to just be okay, I'm done with the pain. I'm done with the suffering. I don't want to do that anymore. But be careful never to arrive there, to not suffering anymore, because that's, again, where the growth is. That's where I can question my thinking. That's where I can question my my defects, and more growth, more leaves sprout, and then I grow closer and closer and closer to God. Anything else you want to add to that, Miss Lulu? No? Okay. Thanks for joining us today. Again, as always, the invitation is open to grow. The invitation is there. If you're dipping your toes in, take off the other shoe, jump in with both feet.